What's going on, guys? So before I get the video started, I just wanted to let you know that after I beat Resident Evil 5, I recorded this video. It was a few months ago, and when I went in to go edit it, I noticed that the microphone had some issues for the first few minutes of the video. Now, it does fix itself around like 5.5 minutes. I will put a timestamp in there so you can just jump ahead to that. I tried to fix the audio in post, but it does still sound a little bit echoey. So just thank you for bearing with me, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another franchise playthrough episode while we play through the Resident Evil franchise. And today we are going to be talking about Resident Evil 5. When Resident Evil 5 initially came out, I had bought it on the Xbox 360 and I had played through it and beaten it. I have not played it since then, and this was a game that I kind of forgot about. I remember certain aspects of it, but I wasn't as involved in the lore of Resident Evil during my first initial playthrough, and I don't really remember the story that well. I do remember some characters and some things that had happened in the ending, but overall I don't really remember what had happened. So going back and revisiting this, there was a lot of things that I completely just forgot happened. Resident Evil 5 was released on March 5th, 2009 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. It was directed by Yasuhiro Anpo and Kenichi Ueda. The game was written by Haruo Murata, Yoshiaki Hirabayashi, and Kenichi Ueda. Now, I played it on the Nintendo Switch, as I have been playing the majority of the Resident Evil playthrough games. So before I get into the storyline and then dive even deeper, let's just remind everyone what my current ranking of the Resident Evil games are. So at the top we have Resident Evil 4, followed by the Resident Evil 2 remake, and then Resident Evil Code Veronica, Resident Evil 3 remake, the original Resident Evil remake, Resident Evil 0, and finally Resident Evil Revelations. So here we are now with Resident Evil 5. I remember reading something that said that Code Veronica was kind of like the last of the Umbrella storyline, and then it kind of switches over because Resident Evil 4 doesn't really have a lot to do with Umbrella. It's kind of like the Umbrella storyline's done. But Resident Evil 5 brings everything back to Umbrella, so it kind of continues that. So really, right now, Resident Evil 4 is kind of like the outlier in the numbered Resident Evils, because it's kind of like its own story. And you do see some elements from 4, like the Las Plagas make their appearance in Resident Evil 5. It's kind of like an offshoot of the same type of virus. So there are some things that were taken from Resident Evil 4 for the story and put into Resident Evil 5, but Resident Evil 5 really just has a lot of throwbacks to the old Resident Evil games. So with that said, spoiler warning, here is the storyline for Resident Evil 5. In 2009, 5 years after the events of Resident Evil 4, Chris Redfield, now an agent of the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, BSAA, is dispatched to Kijuju in Africa. He and his new partner, Sheva Alomar, are tasked with apprehending Ricardo Irving before he can sell a bioorganic weapon, BOW, on the black market. When they arrive, they discover that the locals have been infected by the parasites Las Plagas. Those infected are called Magini, and BSAA Alpha Team have been killed. Chris and Sheva are rescued by BSAA's Delta Team, which includes Sheva's mentor, Captain Josh Stone. In Stone's data, Chris sees a photograph of Jill Valentine, his old partner, who has been presumed dead after a confrontation with Albert Wesker. Chris, Sheva, and Delta Team close in on Irving, but he escapes with the aid of a hooded figure. This is where Irving's deal is to occur, but they discover that the documents are a diversion. When Chris and Sheva try to regroup with Delta Team, they find their team slaughtered by a BOW. Sheva cannot find Stone among the dead. Determined to learn if Valentine is still alive, Chris does not report to headquarters. Continuing through the marsh, they find Stone and track down Irving's boat with his help. Irving injects himself with a variant of the Las Plagas parasite and mutates into a huge octopus-like beast. Chris and Sheva defeat him, and his dying words lead them to a nearby cave to learn more. The cave is the source of a flower used to create viruses previously used by the Umbrella Corporation, as well as a new strain named Ouroboros. Chris and Sheva find evidence that Tricell, the company funding BSAA, took over a former Umbrella underground laboratory and continued Umbrella's research. In the facility, they discover thousands of capsules holding human test subjects. Although Chris finds that one of the capsules is Valentine's, it is empty. When they leave, they discover that Tricell CEO, Excella Gion, has been plotting with Wesker to launch missiles with the Ouroboros virus across the globe. It is eventually revealed that Wesker hopes to take a chosen few from the chaos of the infection and rule them, creating a new breed of humanity. Chris and Sheva pursue Gion, but are stopped by Wesker and the hooded figure, who is revealed to be a mind-controlled Jill Valentine. Gion and Wesker escape to a Tricell oil tanker. Chris and Sheva fight Valentine, subduing her and removing the mind control device before she orders Chris to follow Wesker. Chris and Sheva board the oil tanker and encounter Gion, who escapes after dropping a case of syringes. Sheva keeps several. When Chris and Sheva reach the main deck, Wesker announces over the ship's intercom that he has betrayed Gion and infected her with Ouroboros. She mutates into a giant monster, which Chris and Sheva defeat. Valentine radios in, telling Chris and Sheva that Wesker must take precise, regular doses of a virus to maintain his strength and speed. A larger or smaller dose would poison him. Sheva realizes that Gion's syringes are doses of the drug. Chris and Sheva follow Wesker to a bomber loaded with micelles containing Ouroboros virus, injecting him with the syringes Gion dropped. Wesker tries to escape on the bomber. Chris and Sheva disable it, making him crash land into a volcano. Furious, Wesker exposes himself to Ouroboros and chases Chris and Sheva through the volcano. They fight him, and the weakened Wesker falls into the lava before Chris and Sheva are rescued by helicopter, which is piloted by Valentine and Stone. As a dying Wesker attempts to drag the helicopter into the volcano, Chris and Sheva fire rocket-propelled grenades at Wesker, killing him. In the game's final cutscene, Chris wonders if the world is worth fighting for. Looking at Sheva and Valentine, he decides to live in a world without fear. So there you have it. That's the story for Resident Evil 5. Overall, the storyline, I kind of just feel like is a little forgettable when compared to the other stories. It's another one of these games where it's like the stakes are so high and we have to stop Wesker. And this is also, I feel like the fourth time that I fought Wesker. You kill him in Resident Evil 1, but then he shows up again in Code Veronica. All right, so it's like the third time that Wesker's showing up and he's presumed dead so many times before. I do like that the game connects to the other games and kind of brings everything full circle. I haven't played Resident Evil 6 or 7 or Revelations 2 yet, so I don't know if this closes the door on the Umbrella storyline as of yet, but it feels like it certainly does with the death of Wesker, if he's actually even dead. And so I do like that aspect of the story. It's kind of like, all right, we're gonna move on from here. Now, this game came out during a time where like The Matrix and those type of action movies were huge, right? So they tried to make this similar to that. I mean, Wesker looks like he's just ripped right from The Matrix. He's got the dark glasses, he's got the like super speed, and he's dodging bullets, and he's got this huge leather duster jacket that he's wearing, and like his whole outfit's just all black leather. So you can really see like the inspiration that the movies at the time that were all doing this type of thing kind of played on this game. And also that cutscene between Chris and the flashback cutscene between Chris and Jill fighting Wesker is just such a great cutscene. I mean, it's like it really gets you into it, and it was a lot of nostalgia throwback again to like those type of movies that were coming out around the time. But it's one of my favorite cutscenes in the Resident Evil universe so far. I even do like that there's a lot of callbacks to Code Veronica in here, I mean, because you play as Chris. Whereas I feel like Code Veronica kind of gets ignored through a lot of other storylines. So I enjoyed that they were recognizing it in Resident Evil 5. Two things I've noticed with Resident Evil 5. One is that throughout most of the Resident Evil games, you get a good sense, a bigger picture of the story through the documents that you pick up and read from other people's point of view, or I'm just, like documents from Umbrella, the executives from Umbrella. It kind of grows the story when you read all of these like documents pertaining to the lore. There weren't a lot in this game, and I feel like up until now, this game has had the least amount of documents that you pick up. And I also find it weird that you can't go back and read them. I mean, I think you can in the main menu, but in game, after you pick up a document, you can walk over to it and read it again, but you don't like file it and save it into like your inventory, which was a choice. I don't understand why they did that. But one of the things that I think makes up for that they did do was during the loading screen, you get a Resident Evil history, and it goes all the way back to like the early Spencer Mansion and like the lore way before the games and how everything unfolds, and I really enjoyed that. And I really wish that not only this game would do it, but just games in general. I feel like that's such a good use of loading screen because it feeds people lore while they're waiting for the game to load. And overall, I think that just makes a better player experience at the end of the day. So I did like that a lot. That's actually one of the best things I've liked about this game. So my overall thoughts on the story was, it was a story. Nothing fantastic. Didn't blow my mind. It was kind of like a run-of-the-mill
the stakes are so high, let's save the world. Wesker's like every other villain ever when he wants to take over the world and infect people with this parasite. We've seen this story before. It's nothing new. My thoughts on the gameplay design. Overall, so the over-the-shoulder camera is back. They really took a lot from Resident Evil 4, and I mean, this game just rides the coattails of Resident Evil 4. They try to do a little bit more with it by adding Sheva as like your companion. I played this game solo. I'm sure it's a lot more fun if you're playing with someone and you're co-oping through the whole game. But overall, the game, instead of taking a step forward from what Resident Evil 4 gave us, it really takes a few steps back, or at least it feels that way. This game tries so hard to be an action game, but to still be like a Resident Evil action game, and it fails a lot, in my opinion. Even like 3/4 of the way through the game, all of a sudden it just becomes like a duck and cover shooter. I completely forgot that happened, and it feels weird because you're playing through almost the entire game similarly to Resident Evil 4, and then all of a sudden you get an assault rifle, or you have the option to get an assault rifle, and you have to like hide behind cover and return fire, and it's just weird. It doesn't really work. And because they kept the option in Resident Evil 4 to aim but not strafe, it just doesn't work as an action game, although it really wants to be an action game. Overall, the boss fights in the game were pretty cool. This is one of the best. I feel like this game had some of the best boss fights. In Resident Evil 4 may beat it. There were a lot of fun boss fights, but there were also equally a lot of frustrating boss fights too. The Jill and Wesker boss fight, probably one of the most frustrating boss fights I've had so far. Mainly because after you beat Wesker, then you have to fight Jill, but you can't kill her because then you lose. So you have to hit her in the chest of the thing that's mind controlling her, and it's such a small target, and if you miss, you kill her. And I just remember getting very angry at the game at this point because I kept either killing Jill or getting killed. The game doesn't tell you what you need to do, which sometimes is good. So in like the sense of Breath of the Wild, right? It doesn't hold your hand and you can do whatever you want. But in a game like this, it throws you into some boss battle and makes you figure it out. But what you need to do sometimes is so just like subtle and something you won't even think about that you almost need to like look up how to beat certain aspects of the game, like how to beat Wesker, because you can't come at him head on. You need to like hide from him and walk around to the back of him and shoot him. I guess after playing a few times you figure it out, but if you're trying to figure it out on your own, it might take a while, and that just, it gets really annoying and really frustrating. The game looks great. I don't know if it was upgraded from the since it initially launched on 360, but I was playing it on Switch, and although sometimes for the actual gameplay that I did notice some dropped frame rates, that just could be because it's a port. The cinematics were good, and overall the graphics, I mean, they still hold up today. It still looks like a solid game. One of my number one complaints, they took away the merchant. Why would you take away the merchant? He was one of the best things about Resident Evil 4. And instead of, they didn't replace him with any other merchant, they just, now all of a sudden you can sell, upgrade, and buy stuff in between chapters? This just seemed weird to me. I feel like everyone loves the merchant from Resident Evil 4. Why would you take him away? Why would you, or anytime you die, you can do it too. It's like, you die and then you can upgrade your stuff, and you can't do it again until you reach the end of a chapter. And sometimes I'd upgrade, my machine gun, and then at the beginning of the next chapter, I'd get a new machine gun, and it's like, well, that was pointless. I just didn't like that aspect. Just leave the merchant in. It was something that worked so well in Resident Evil 4, I don't know why they got rid of it. The puzzles overall are easy. Sheva can sometimes get annoying and kind of get in your way. The game does get frustrating. I think I got frustrated with this game more than any other Resident Evil game thus far, and that's, we're talking about the games that had the fixed camera angle, which sometimes is hard to control and maneuver. And I still found myself being like, what the fuck does the game want me to do? Or I'm doing the wrong thing. Another example of this is the final fight in the volcano with Wesker. Initially, I tried a few times to not look up any strategy on how to do it, try and beat it on my own. And there's a part where you knock over the boulder, but it's, I guess, to get Sheva to come down and help you. But I hadn't triggered that like cutscene yet to where Sheva needs to come down. So I knocked over the boulder and I couldn't do anything, and I'm thinking I need to jump across it, but I don't need to jump across it. and I just died. And then eventually I just got fed up with the whole final boss fight that I just purchased a rocket launcher and beat Wesker the easy way. But overall for this game, it took me longer to get invested into it. Playing it sometimes felt like a chore, and I feel like maybe it's because I've been playing through these for over a year now. I mean, I'm taking breaks here and there. Maybe I'm just Resident Evil fatigued. I don't know. But I wasn't as, like, I wanted to play more. I wanted to figure out more until I was near the end of the game. And I think part of that also was just me being like, okay, I'm so close. I just want to beat it now. And that's kind of how I felt about Resident Evil 5. So with that being said, let's rank it. So right now, I mean, where am I going to put this on the board? I'll tell you right now, it's not better than the original Resident Evil HD remake. So that begs the question, is it better than Resident Evil 0? There are a lot of similar things. You have two main characters. I think I had a more enjoyable time playing Resident Evil 0. And I think Resident Evil 0 is a better game. I think what this game tries to do, again, riding on the coattails of Resident Evil 4, doesn't really succeed a lot. Tries to be more of an action game than like a horror game. I think it does a disservice for it. Story isn't very memorable. Now, is it better than Resident Evil Revelations? Yes, I think it is. And I think that's just because Resident Evil Revelations was hindered by the fact that it was a 3DS game, and the technology they made to create the game, they just didn't have like the bandwidth to make it as good of a game as it should have been. So I think it has a minor leg up on Resident Evil Revelations. So I'm gonna have to put this near the bottom. So your new ranking: Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Original, Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil Revelations. So the Resident Evil franchise playthrough continues on next time as I take a dive into Resident Evil Revelations 2. From here on out, I have not played the following 4 games. As of this video, Village has not come out yet. So I have 4 games left, which is Resident Evil Revelations 2, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8, and Resident Evil 6. I don't know why I did that out of order, but yeah, I guess because I've heard that Resident Evil 6 is not very good. So I am excited to play all these games that I've never played before. Please join me in my journey. If you like what you saw here, head on over to my channel. Please like, favorite, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications every time I post a new video. And hopefully I will see you in my next Resident Evil review for Resident Evil Revelations 2.